Bloodline War. Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa reacts to Gunther beating up Jimmy Uso. A war is coming. The WWE Universe has witnessed countless battles, betrayals, and power struggles throughout its history, but few have shaken the industry to its core like the turmoil brewing within the Bloodline. Once an unbreakable faction led by the seemingly untouchable Roman Reigns, the Bloodline is now teetering on the edge of collapse. And, at the heart of this chaos, a brutal attack that sent shockwaves through WWE. Gunther, the ring general, destroying Jimmy Uso in a ruthless display of power. The repercussions of this assault extend far beyond Jimmy himself. They reach into the very heart of WWE's most dominant dynasty. Roman Reigns, the self-proclaimed tribal chief, has ruled with an iron fist, demanding loyalty and respect from his family. But with every passing week, his grip weakens. His once loyal enforcer, Solo Sikoa, is an enigma. Where do his true allegiances lie? And now, with Gunther stepping into the fray, the war for dominance has escalated to a level no one saw coming. This is more than a fight. This is a war over blood, power, and legacy. How did we get here? The rise of the Bloodline. To understand the gravity of this moment, we have to go back to the beginning, when the Bloodline was at its peak. It all started with one man, Roman Reigns. When Reigns returned to WWE at SummerSlam 2020, he was no longer the corporate favorite being pushed down the throats of the WWE Universe. This was a different Roman, a ruthless, calculating, and dominant force. Aligning himself with Paul Heyman, he wasted no time in claiming the Universal Championship and, more importantly, asserting his dominance over the entire roster. But what truly solidified Reigns as the undisputed tribal chief was his brutal war against his own family, the Usos. In a series of emotionally charged matches against Jey Uso, Roman broke his cousin's spirit, forcing him to acknowledge him as the head of the table. Eventually, Jimmy Uso fell in line as well, and with their loyalty secured, the Bloodline became an unstoppable force. Then came Solo Sikoa. The youngest of the Anoa'i dynasty, Solo was introduced at Clash at the Castle 2022, helping Roman retain his championship against Drew McIntyre. From that moment, he became Reigns' silent enforcer, a destroyer who rarely spoke but always acted with precision. The Bloodline was complete. For nearly 3 years, they ran WWE, decimating challengers, holding multiple titles, and rewriting the record books. The Usos became the longest-reigning tag team champions in WWE history. Roman became the greatest champion of the modern era, with a historic title reign surpassing 1,000 days. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. The downfall, betrayals, chaos, and Gunther's arrival. The cracks started forming when Sami Zayn entered the picture. His storyline with the Bloodline was one of WWE's most compelling sagas, watching him desperately seek their approval, earning their trust, and ultimately turning on them at the Royal Rumble 2023 was storytelling at its finest. But the real fracture came when Jey Uso left the faction. At SummerSlam 2023, after months of manipulation, Jey finally had enough. He walked away from the Bloodline, choosing freedom over family. This left Jimmy Uso in an uncertain position, loyal to his brother, but also stuck under Roman's rule. And that's where Gunther entered the equation. Gunther has been carving his own path of dominance since arriving on the main roster. As the longest-reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time, he has destroyed every opponent in his path. He embodies discipline, brutality, and absolute control, everything Roman Reigns claims to stand for. But Gunther is not a man who kneels before another. His attack on Jimmy Uso was more than just an assault, it was a declaration of war. By targeting Jimmy, Gunther has effectively called out Roman, Solo, and the entire Bloodline. He isn't looking to fall in line, he's looking to conquer. The question is, how will Roman Reigns respond? The Bloodline's breaking point. There was a time when Roman Reigns' word was absolute. If he said jump, the Usos jumped. If he told Solo to take someone out, they were gone. But that authority is slipping. Jimmy Uso, the man who once betrayed his own twin brother to remain by Roman's side, now finds himself beaten and humiliated by an outsider. Solo Sikoa, who has been nothing but loyal, has remained eerily quiet. And Roman Reigns has never dealt with a challenge quite like Gunther. Unlike Brock Lesnar, Cody Rhodes, or even Kevin Owens, Gunther isn't just coming for a title, he's coming for dominance. He doesn't play mind games. He doesn't need outside interference. He dismantles his opponents, piece by piece, leaving no room for excuses. And if there's one thing Roman hates, it's a threat he can't control. What happens next? The war begins. This isn't just about Gunther versus the Bloodline. It's about what the Bloodline even is anymore. Will Roman demand revenge and take the fight to Gunther? Will Solo Sikoa step up, or will he start questioning his own loyalties? What about Jimmy Uso? Does he have any fight left after this brutal attack? And where does Jey Uso stand? Could he return to help his fallen brother? These are the questions that will define the future of WWE. What we do know is this: the Bloodline War has begun. And with Gunther making his move, it's only a matter of time before everything erupts into chaos. The WWE landscape will never be the same again. The attack. Gunther's destruction of Jimmy Uso. A moment that changed everything. The energy inside the arena was electric. The WWE Universe had packed the venue, buzzing with anticipation for another dramatic chapter in the Bloodline saga. Jimmy Uso was in the ring, pacing back and forth, his usual cocky demeanor intact, but there was an undeniable tension in his body language. He had spent the last few weeks in an uncertain place, loyal to Roman, abandoned by Jey, but still questioning his role in the Bloodline. Tonight was supposed to be another night of proving his worth, reminding Roman why he still belonged at the table. But Gunther had different plans. No one in the crowd expected what happened next. As Jimmy stood in the center of the ring, microphone in hand, the lights dimmed, and an ominous silence fell over the crowd. Then, the opening war drums of Gunther's entrance theme shattered the quiet. The WWE Universe erupted, their cheers mixed with gasps of shock. Gunther? Here? Now? Jimmy turned toward the entrance ramp, his face betraying a flicker of concern. This wasn't some cocky challenger or a disgruntled mid-carder looking for attention. This was the Intercontinental Champion, the Ring General, a man who had destroyed everyone in his path. Gunther walked with his usual slow, deliberate pace, his cold, calculating eyes locked on Jimmy. Behind him, his Imperium allies, Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci, stood in formation, stone-faced, unyielding. But something was different. Gunther wasn't dressed for a match. He wasn't here for an exhibition. He was here for war. Gunther's intentions, a silent declaration of war. Jimmy Uso, never one to back down from a fight, smirked and raised the microphone. So what, big man? You think you can just walk down here and scare me? You think 'cause you hold that little title, you're on our level? Gunther didn't answer. He didn't need to. Instead, he climbed into the ring, standing just inches from Jimmy, towering over him with an intensity that sent a chill through the arena. The camera zoomed in on Jimmy's face, his smirk faltered. Then, without a word, Gunther struck. A beating unlike any other. The first chop echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Jimmy's body recoiled, his chest instantly turning red from the impact. The crowd gasped in unison. Everyone knew Gunther's signature chops were devastating, but this was different. This wasn't a wrestling move. This was an execution. Gunther followed up with a second chop. Then a third. Each blow sent shockwaves through Jimmy's body, his legs buckling under the sheer force. The once confident Uso was now on the defensive, struggling to cover up as Gunther pinned him into the corner, delivering a relentless series of strikes. Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci stood outside the ring, their expressions emotionless, watching their leader systematically dismantle a former tag team champion as if he were an unworthy adversary. Jimmy tried to fight back. With whatever strength he had left, he swung a wild punch at Gunther's jaw. It connected, but the ring general barely flinched. Instead, he snatched Jimmy's arm mid-swing and yanked him forward with terrifying force, lifting him clean off his feet and slamming him into the mat with a brutal powerbomb. The ring shook. Jimmy lay sprawled out, his body motionless. Gunther wasn't done. The statement. The final blow. Gunther stood over Jimmy Uso, his expression one of cold, calculating indifference. He reached down, grabbed Jimmy by the throat, and dragged him to his knees. The camera zoomed in again. Jimmy's chest was red, his breathing ragged. He looked up at Gunther, pain in his eyes, but also defiance. Gunther stared down at him for a long moment. Then, in a move that sent chills through the WWE Universe, he delivered one final, thunderous chop to Jimmy's skull. The impact was sickening. Jimmy collapsed face first onto the mat. The referee rushed into the ring, waving his arms, signaling for medical staff. Gunther didn't care. He turned his back, stepped over Jimmy's lifeless body, and calmly exited the ring as if nothing had happened. The fallout, silence, shock, and fear. The arena was eerily quiet. The usual mix of cheers and boos that accompanies a dramatic WWE moment was absent. Instead, there was a collective sense of shock. The commentary team was stunned. Michael Cole's voice trembled. That wasn't a match. That wasn't a statement. That was the message. Corey Graves, in disbelief. Gunther just walked into the Bloodline's house and ripped it apart. Even the WWE Universe, so often ready to chant, cheer, and react, seemed frozen in place. This wasn't just a rivalry. This was an invasion. As Jimmy Uso was stretchered out of the arena, the question loomed. Where was Roman Reigns? Where was Solo Sikoa? Why had no one from the Bloodline come to his aid? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, what happens when Roman finds out? Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa react. The Bloodline's internal crisis. The silence before the storm. The moment Jimmy Uso was loaded onto the stretcher and wheeled away, the WWE Universe knew that the night wasn't over. Gunther had made his move, but how would the Bloodline respond? Backstage, the camera cut to a dimly lit room. The tribal chief, Roman Reigns, sat in his usual place, a lavish leather chair, hands clasped, deep in thought. His undisputed WWE Universal Championship rested on a table beside him, gleaming under the faint glow of the overhead lights. His expression? Unreadable. Beside him stood Solo Sikoa, arms crossed, face carved in stone. The enforcer of the Bloodline stared at the screen showing the replay of Jimmy Uso's brutal dismantling. The room was quiet. Uncomfortably quiet. Paul Heyman, always the first to break the silence in moments of crisis, nervously adjusted his tie. He had been here before. He had seen Roman's wrath before. But tonight felt different. The tribal chief speaks. After what felt like an eternity, Roman finally spoke. So, he muttered, his voice calm but laced with something dangerous. His eyes remained fixed on the screen, watching every devastating chop, every powerbomb, every ruthless blow that Gunther had delivered to Jimmy. You telling me that my cousin got put in a hospital and nobody did a damn thing about it? Paul Heyman cleared his throat, his hands fidgeting. He knew the explosion was coming. My tribal chief, Heyman began, his voice careful, we didn't anticipate Gunther's move. There was no warning, no. Roman snapped his head toward Heyman. Did I ask you what we anticipated? Heyman shut his mouth immediately. Solo Sikoa, still silent, shifted his weight slightly. He hadn't said a word since the attack. His hands clenched into fists. His jaw tightened. Roman turned to him. You saw what I saw. Solo gave a single nod. Roman leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes narrowing. Then tell me, yes, what do we do now? A beat of silence. Then Solo spoke. We finish it. Solo's wrath, the enforcer unleashed. Roman smirked. That dangerous, knowing smirk. That's what I like to hear, he said, sitting back in his chair. But Paul Heyman wasn't convinced. My tribal chief. Heyman hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Gunther is not just another challenger. He's the Intercontinental Champion, a dominant force, Roman held up a hand. I know who he is, Paul. The question is, does he know who we are? The smirk faded. Roman leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Because if he did, he never would have put his hands on my family. Solo's fingers twitched. He was barely containing himself. Roman noticed. You want to handle this, Solo? Solo finally looked up, his face a mask of pure aggression. Say the word. Roman chuckled under his breath. He tapped the championship belt beside him. Go let him know who we are. Solo nodded once. Then he turned and walked out of the room, his pace steady, but his intentions lethal. Gunther's response. The battle lines are drawn. The camera cut back to the arena. Gunther was still in the ring, standing like a conqueror on a battlefield. The WWE Universe was still buzzing, unsure whether to cheer for his dominance or recoil at the sheer brutality of his actions. Then, the unmistakable guitar screech of the Bloodline's theme hit the speakers. The reaction was instant. The crowd erupted as solo Sikoa emerged from the entrance ramp. No theatrics. No hesitation. Just pure, unfiltered fury. He marched straight to the ring, eyes locked on Gunther, jaw clenched. There was no smirk, no taunting, just a deadly seriousness that the WWE Universe hadn't seen in a long time. Gunther tilted his head slightly, intrigued but unbothered. He motioned for his Imperium allies to step back. This was going to be one-on-one. The ring shook as Solo slid under the ropes and immediately charged. The clash of titans, Solo versus Gunther. The collision was violent. Solo and Gunther met in the center of the ring, two forces of nature smashing into each other like unstoppable objects. Solo swung first. A vicious right hook that connected clean with Gunther's jaw. The impact was deafening. Gunther staggered, but only for a second. Then, like a machine programmed for destruction, he fired back. A thunderous chop to Solo's chest. Solo didn't flinch. Another chop. Solo stood firm. A third chop. Solo roared. The enforcer of the Bloodline exploded forward, tackling Gunther to the mat, raining down punches. The crowd was losing their minds. For the first time in a long time, someone was matching Gunther's brutality. Chaos erupts. The Bloodline strikes back. The fight was absolute chaos. Solo and Gunther brawled with no regard for rules, no concern for safety. Referees flooded the ring, trying to separate them, but it was useless. Then, the lights dimmed. The familiar heartbeat sound effect hit the speakers. A slow, chilling voice echoed through the arena. Acknowledge me. And just like that, Roman Reigns was here. The crowd exploded as Roman's music hit, and the tribal chief stepped onto the stage. Gunther finally looked away from Solo. His expression remained unreadable, but his body language shifted. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was war. The fallout in the locker room. After the fight, Bloodline in disarray. The match was over. The ring was cleared. But the real war was just beginning. Backstage, the locker room was in chaos. WWE officials rushed around. Medics scrambled to assess the damage, and the Bloodline's private area had been placed on lockdown. Solo Sikoa, bruised but unbroken, was pacing like a caged animal. Sweat dripped down his face. His fists were still clenched. His rage hadn't faded. It had deepened. He had gone to war with Gunther and walked away without a victory. For Solo, that wasn't just a setback. It was a personal insult. Roman Reigns, having just returned from his dramatic entrance and stare down in the arena, entered the room. The door slammed behind him. Silence fell. Paul Heyman was already inside, anxiously trying to get updates on Jimmy Uso's condition. His phone buzzed nonstop with messages from WWE officials and hospital contacts. No matter how fast his fingers typed, he couldn't keep up. Roman stood still. He scanned the room. His eyes fell on Solo. You took your shot. You made him bleed. Solo nodded slowly. But he's still standing, Roman added. Still walking. Still breathing. Solo looked away. Roman walked over to him and stopped just inches from his face. That means this ain't over. A family torn in two. Jimmy Uso wasn't just a teammate or a tag partner. He was blood. And for all the betrayals and backstabs in recent Bloodline history, there was still a code. You didn't let outsiders beat up family. Gunther crossed that line. He crossed it on live television. And now, the family was divided on how to respond. Uso hadn't spoken. Not publicly. Not privately. Rumors swirled that he had left the arena the moment Jimmy hit the mat. Some insiders claimed he went straight to the hospital. Others said he walked out in disgust, sick of the dysfunction. Roman didn't care about rumors. He cared about control. I want everyone here, he told Heyman. Next week. No excuses. No disappearing acts. If you wear our colors, you show up. Period. Heyman nodded, hesitantly. But there was one problem. Jay won't answer his phone, Heyman said softly. He blocked everyone. Even me. Roman's face twitched. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He didn't flip a table. Instead, he walked over to his chair. Sat down. Leaned back. And smiled. Then, he better hope Jimmy wakes up soon. An unholy alliance? Elsewhere backstage, Imperium watched the chaos unfold. Gunther, flanked by Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci, stood in the shadows, calm as ever. They're unraveling, Kaiser said. Gunther said nothing. His arms were crossed. His eyes were locked on a backstage monitor replaying the solo confrontation. He didn't see a family. He saw weakness disguised as power. Emotion masquerading as leadership. He saw a kingdom ready to fall. You really think Roman Reigns is going to take this lightly? Vinci asked. Gunther finally spoke. He won't have a choice. And just like that, the war wasn't just personal anymore. It was strategic. Lines drawn. SmackDown Civil War. By the time Friday night SmackDown went off the air, social media was on fire. Hashtags like #BloodlineWar, #Gunther vs. Roman, and #WhereIsJay were trending worldwide. Fans didn't just want to fight. They wanted answers. They wanted to know where every piece of the puzzle fit. And most of all, they wanted to know how long this fragile empire could stand before collapsing. Backstage, superstars whispered in hallways. Alliances were questioned. Loyalties tested. Everyone knew. When titans fall, the tremors hit everyone. The Bloodline was at war with Gunther. But the bigger threat? The Bloodline was at war with itself. Jey Uso's return. A family divided. The weight of betrayal. The night had already delivered chaos. Jimmy Uso was in a hospital bed. Gunther had declared war. Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa were ready to respond. But there was one question on everyone's mind. Where was Jey Uso? For weeks, Jey had been absent from the Bloodline's affairs. He had walked away. He had refused to stand with Roman, refused to choose Jimmy, refused to play the game of family loyalty any longer. But the moment Jimmy was brutalized, something changed. The unexpected arrival. Backstage, Roman Reigns paced. His usual calm demeanor was cracking. Paul Heyman stood by, checking his phone, likely waiting for updates from the hospital. Solo Sikoa sat on a bench, his hands wrapped in tape, still seething from his battle with Gunther. Then a knock on the door. Everyone froze. Knocks didn't happen in the Bloodline's locker room. People didn't knock. They were summoned. Roman's eyes narrowed. Come in. The door creaked open. And there he was. Jey Uso. Dressed in street clothes, hoodie up, his usual fire dimmed, but not extinguished. The camera zoomed in on Roman's face. No surprise. No anger. Just a cold stare. Jey looked around the room, his eyes locking onto Solo first. Then Paul Heyman. Then finally, Roman. The tension in the air was suffocating. Jey versus Roman. The conversation that had to happen. Roman smirked, leaning back against the wall. You finally show up. Jey exhaled slowly, nodding. Where were you, yes? Roman's voice was calm, too calm. Your brother got his ass handed to him. You should have been here. Jey clenched his jaw. And if I was? What? I'm supposed to stand next to you. Fight your battles? Do your dirty work? Solo stood up, fists clenched. Watch your mouth, yes. Jey didn't even look at him. His eyes stayed locked on Roman. Roman chuckled under his breath. So that's what this is now. You're still mad? You still crying over what happened months ago? Jay shook his head, stepping forward. Nah, see, that's the difference between me and you, Roman. You hold grudges. You punish people.
Me?
I don't gotta do all that. But I ain't stupid either. Roman's smirk faded. What are you saying? Jay took another step forward, looking Roman dead in the eyes. I know why Gunther did what he did. A beat of silence. Roman's eyes darkened. Enlighten me. Jay's voice was steady. Because for the first time in years, somebody saw what I saw. They saw that you ain't unbeatable. You ain't untouchable. They saw weakness. They saw what I saw the night I left. The tension explodes. Solo lunged. Jay barely had time to react as Solo shoved him back against the wall. Paul Heyman gasped, stepping between them. Solo, no.
No.
This is not the time. Jay shoved Solo back. Oh, so now you want to fight me? After everything I did for you? Solo's nostrils flared. You turned your back on us, yes. Jay laughed bitterly. Turn my back? Or did I finally see the truth? Roman finally stepped between them. That's enough. His voice was sharp, commanding. Jay and Solo both breathed heavily, their fists clenched. Roman's eyes flicked between them. This is what he wants. This is what Gunther wants. You two fighting. You two forgetting what matters. Jay wiped his face, shaking his head. Nah, Roman. You still don't get it. Roman narrowed his eyes. Get what? Jay exhaled. That I ain't here for you. Roman's brow furrowed slightly. Then why are you here? Jay's jaw clenched. I'm here for Jimmy. The Bloodline versus Imperium. The war begins. The challenge is issued. The night after the chaos that unfolded between the Bloodline and Gunther, the WWE Universe was buzzing. Everyone knew that something bigger was coming. And it came fast. As SmackDown opened, the arena was electric. Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, and Paul Heyman stood in the ring, their expressions deadly serious. The WWE Undisputed Universal Champion held his title on his shoulder, the weight of leadership bearing down on him. Paul Heyman adjusted his tie before bringing the microphone to his lips. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman. The crowd booed loudly. Heyman winced, but continued. And I am here standing beside the tribal chief, the most dominant force in WWE history, Roman Reigns. And yet, Heyman's voice dropped, and his face darkened. Last week, an outsider, a man who does not belong in our business, made a mistake. The crowd erupted at the mention of Gunther. Roman slowly raised the mic. His voice was calm, but there was venom behind every word. Gunther, I don't know who gave you the idea that you could step into my world and put your hands on my family. He adjusted the championship belt on his shoulder. But I promise you, there are consequences. The arena shook as Imperium's music hit. The WWE Intercontinental Champion, Gunther, Ludwig Kaiser, and Giovanni Vinci emerged onto the stage. Gunther held the IC title high. No fear. No hesitation. Just confidence. He raised a mic to his lips. Roman, you talk about consequences. You talk about your family. But last week, I proved something to the entire world. Your family is weak. The crowd gasped. Roman's face didn't change. But Solo Sikoa? He took a step forward, seething. Gunther smirked. If you take offense to the truth, then perhaps you should do something about it. Roman took a deep breath. Oh, I will. He dropped the mic. And just like that, the fight was on. All-out war erupts. Solo Sikoa bolted up the ramp, charging at Imperium like an uncaged animal. Gunther met him halfway. The impact was monstrous. The two brutes collided, sending shockwaves through the crowd. Punches flew. Elbows landed. Chops echoed through the arena. Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci tried to join in, but Roman Reigns was already there. The tribal chief moved with precision. One Superman punch to Vinci. A devastating clothesline to Kaiser. The Bloodline wasn't just fighting back. They were making a statement. Security poured out from the back, trying to separate the carnage. Referees, producers, nothing could stop the chaos. Finally, WWE officials managed to pull the factions apart, shoving them to opposite sides of the ramp. The crowd chanted wildly, "Let them fight! Let them fight!" Roman wiped his mouth, grinning. He grabbed a mic from the floor, breathless but steady. "You want this fight, Gunther?" Gunther, bruised but smiling, nodded. Roman smirked. Then next week, Bloodline versus Imperium. The arena exploded. The war was officially declared. The battle lines are drawn. Backstage fallout, Bloodline's strategy meeting. The cameras cut to the Bloodline's locker room, where the air was thick with tension. Roman Reigns sat at the head of the table, hands clasped in front of him. The undisputed WWE Universal Championship rested nearby, gleaming under the lights. Sikoa stood off to the side, pacing like a predator. Paul Heyman hovered nervously, his phone in hand, likely waiting for updates on Jimmy Uso. And Jey Uso? Jey sat apart from them, arms crossed, eyes locked on Roman. The silence was deafening. Finally, Roman spoke. "This is war." His voice was low, measured. "And war requires strategy." Solo cracked his knuckles. "Ain't no strategy needed, Yus. I just need Gunther in that ring. One-on-one." Roman's eyes flicked to Solo. "And that's exactly what he wants, Solo." Paul Heyman nodded quickly, stepping forward. "Gentlemen, let's not be foolish. Imperium is a well-oiled machine. They don't just fight, they dismantle. And Gunther? He's not just a champion, he's a tactician. He's already shown us his hand by attacking Jimmy Uso." Jey scoffed, shaking his head. "Man, I don't need no history lesson on Gunther. We all saw what happened. The real question is, what we gonna do about it?" Roman leaned back in his chair. "We play smart. We play our game. Gunther thinks he's a general? Fine. But he's stepping into our territory." Jey tilted his head. "And that means what, exactly?" Roman smirked. "It means we don't just win. We embarrass them." Gunther's plan, Imperium's response. Elsewhere in the arena, Imperium stood in their own locker room. Gunther, Ludwig Kaiser, and Giovanni Vinci surrounded a table, reviewing footage of Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. Kaiser leaned forward. "They are predictable. Emotional. That is their weakness." Vinci nodded in agreement. "We have the advantage in technique. In discipline. They rely on brute force. That can be exploited." Gunther remained silent, his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the screen. Then finally he spoke. "Roman Reigns is a king who believes he cannot be overthrown." The room fell silent. Gunther turned to Kaiser and Vinci. "Next week, we do not fight them on their terms. We fight them on ours." Vinci frowned. "You mean?" Gunther's lips curled into a smirk. "We take away their strength before they even step into the ring." The camera zoomed in on Gunther's face. Something sinister was coming. Ambush at the airport. The first strike. Fast forward to 3 days before the scheduled match. Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, Paul Heyman, and Jey Uso arrived at the airport, walking towards their SUV in the parking lot. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Paul Heyman tapped away at his phone, speaking rapidly about travel logistics. Yes, Mr. Reigns requires priority security." Bang! A loud crash echoed through the lot. The Bloodline whirled around, just in time to see a group of masked figures rushing toward them. Before anyone could react, they were under attack. One figure swung a steel chair at Solo, hitting him square in the ribs. Another slammed into Jey Uso, sending him crashing into a parked car. Roman ducked a punch, countering with a vicious right hand. But then he saw him. Gunther. Unmasked. Unafraid. He charged at Roman, tackling him against the SUV. Blows were exchanged. Fists. Forearms. Chops that echoed through the night. But before the Bloodline could recover, Imperium vanished into the darkness. They had made their move. The war had officially begun. Bloodline's retaliation, setting the trap. After the ambush, Bloodline in chaos. The night of the airport attack left the Bloodline shaken. It wasn't just the physical wounds, though they were plenty. It was the message. Gunther and Imperium had attacked them outside the ring, in a place where Roman Reigns was supposed to be untouchable. And that that couldn't go unanswered. Inside the locker room on the next SmackDown, Roman sat in silence. Solo Sikoa was seated across from him, arms crossed, ribs still sore from the steel chair shot. Jey Uso leaned against the wall, his knuckles wrapped in bandages. Paul Heyman? He paced nervously, phone in hand, speaking to WWE officials. No, Mr. Pierce. We're not waiting for an official match contract. The tribal chief demands justice. This is beyond sanctioned events. This is about dominance. Roman finally spoke, his voice calm, but deadly. Paul. Heyman immediately stopped pacing. Yes, my tribal chief? Roman exhaled through his nose, eyes locked on the floor. Gunther thinks he's playing chess. He looked up. Then we change the game. Jey narrowed his eyes. And what exactly does that mean? Roman slowly leaned forward. It means we don't wait for the match. We don't wait for the next attack. We control the battlefield. We pick the moment. We set the trap. Solo smirked. And when they walk into it, Roman's lips barely moved. We break them. Luring Imperium in the fake vulnerability. That same night, SmackDown's main event was set. Gunther versus Jey Uso one-on-one. Gunther was more than ready. After all, he had already proved his dominance by taking out Jimmy Uso. Now, taking down Jey would be nothing more than another show of force. But what Gunther didn't know, the match wasn't the real fight. The fight would start when Imperium least expected it. Gunther versus Jey Uso, the match that wasn't meant to be. The WWE Universe was buzzing as Gunther and Jey Uso stood across from each other in the ring. Gunther, standing tall, his Intercontinental Championship draped over his shoulder, gave Jey a look of pure disdain. Jey, however, he smirked. The bell rang. Gunther moved in quickly, his arms raised for a lockup, but Jey slid out of the ring immediately. The crowd murmured in confusion. Gunther tilted his head. Jey backed up the ramp, tapping the side of his head. Gunther took a step forward, and the lights in the arena suddenly flickered. Something was wrong. A split second later, Solo Sikoa came sprinting through the crowd and slid into the ring behind Gunther. Gunther turned, but it was too late. Superkick to the jaw. The audience erupted as Gunther staggered. Before he could recover, Roman Reigns appeared out of nowhere, sliding into the ring. The tribal chief measured his shot. Spear. Gunther was laid out. Imperium had fallen into the trap. The war escalates, chaos across WWE. The fallout from the trap. The WWE Universe erupted after the shocking events of SmackDown. Gunther, the ring general himself, had been humiliated by Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. For the first time in recent memory, Imperium had been outsmarted. The image of Gunther sprawled on the mat, clutching his ribs, while Roman Reigns stood over him with a smirk was everywhere. Social media was in a frenzy. Fans debated fiercely. Did Gunther deserve it after what he did to Jimmy? Was this Roman proving he's still the top dog in WWE? What will Imperium do to retaliate? But behind the scenes, Gunther wasn't just mad. He was furious. The ring general wasn't used to losing battles. And if Roman Reigns thought this war was over, he was dead wrong. Gunther strikes back, NXT invasion. 4 nights later, at WWE's NXT event, chaos unfolded. The main event was Solo Sikoa versus Carmelo Hayes, a match that had nothing to do with Imperium. Or so everyone thought. The match was nearing its climax. Solo had just hit a massive Samoan drop on Carmelo and was lining up the Samoan spike. Then, suddenly, Gunther's music hit. The crowd erupted. Solo trotted toward the entrance ramp, expecting to see the ring general. But Gunther wasn't there. Instead, Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci stormed the ring from the crowd. Before Solo could react, Kaiser smashed a steel chair across his back. The arena erupted into boos. Solo tried to fight back, but the numbers were too much. Then, finally, Gunther emerged from the crowd. Methodically, calmly, like a predator stalking his prey. Solo was on one knee, breathing heavily, pain etched across his face. Gunther stood over him, shaking his head. Then, with zero hesitation, Gunther delivered the most vicious chop WWE had ever seen. The sound echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Solo collapsed. Gunther grabbed a mic. "You wanted a war, Roman?" Gunther smirked. "Then a war is what you'll get." He tossed the mic onto Solo's motionless body. The WWE Universe had their answer. Gunther wasn't just fighting back. He was bringing war to every brand. Got it. Now I'll begin writing Section 9, Bloodline versus Imperium, the final message before war, ensuring it's filled with intensity, psychological mind games, and the final build-up to the inevitable clash. I'll stop once I reach 3,000 words and let you know when it's ready for the next section. Here we go. Bloodline versus Imperium, the final message before war. SmackDown opens with tension. The WWE Universe was buzzing. After weeks of attacks, ambushes, and mind games, only one episode of SmackDown remained before the official showdown between the Bloodline and Imperium. And tonight, both sides were in the building. Roman Reigns arrived first, flanked by Solo Sikoa and a visibly furious Ooso. Paul Heyman walked cautiously behind them, phone in hand, speaking in hushed tones. "Yes, Mr. Pierce, I understand security concerns, but let me be clear, the tribal chief does not retreat. Ever." They entered the Bloodline's private locker room, slamming the door shut. A camera cut to the parking lot. Gunther, Kaiser, and Vinci arrived. No security. No hesitation. Just cold, calculated focus. The battle wasn't coming. The battle was already here. Roman sends his final warning. Midway through SmackDown, Roman Reigns made his way to the ring. His entrance was slow, methodical, powerful. The fans were split, some cheering, some booing. He grabbed a mic. "Gunther, I hope you're watching." The crowd popped. "Because after this week, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember why I sit at the head of a table. I want you to remember why I have run this business for over 3 years. I want you to remember what happens when you mess with MY Bloodline." Roman stared straight into the camera. "You wanted a fight? You got it. But after this, you go back to your little Intercontinental Championship and stay in your lane. Because this is my WWE." Suddenly, Gunther's music hit. The arena exploded. Roman smirked, watching as Gunther marched to the ring, no fear in his eyes. They were face to face. The tribal chief. The ring general. The WWE Universe was on its feet. Gunther slowly lifted the mic. "Roman." The tension was palpable. "You talk about being at the top, but kings fall. Empires crumble. And this Saturday?" Gunther's smirk grew. "You lose everything." The crowd went insane. Roman gritted his teeth. Gunther wasn't backing down. This wasn't just about a fight anymore. This was about legacy, power, the future of WWE. Bloodline versus Imperium. The war begins. The arena is set. The battle of dominance. It was finally here. The moment that had been building for weeks. The undisputed power of WWE, Roman Reigns' Bloodline, was about to collide head-on with Gunther's Imperium, the most dominant force in modern wrestling. The arena was electric. The crowd was buzzing, knowing that history was about to be made. The ring announcer stood in the center of the squared circle, microphone in hand, as the tension reached its breaking point. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the main event." The Bloodline's music hit. The WWE Universe exploded. Roman Reigns stepped onto the stage, flanked by Solo Sikoa and Ooso. Their expressions? Pure, calculated focus. Roman wore his championship around his waist, the symbol of 3 years of dominance. Solo cracked his knuckles. Jay smacked his chest, feeding off the energy of the crowd. They made their way down the ramp, exuding an aura of unmatched power. Then, Imperium's music hit. The atmosphere shifted. Gunther stepped out first. Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci flanked him, their faces showing zero emotion. Gunther locked eyes with Roman from across the arena. It was like time stood still. Both men knew. This wasn't just a fight. This was a statement. The Bloodline slid into the ring. Imperium followed. The referee tried to separate them, but it was pointless. The war was about to begin. The first shot fired. Before the bell even rang, Sikoa struck first. He rushed at Gunther, blindsiding him with a clubbing forearm to the back of the head. The arena erupted into chaos. Ooso threw himself at Kaiser, while Vinci tackled Roman into the corner. The referee had lost all control. This wasn't a wrestling match anymore. This was a brawl. Gunther, despite the early cheap shot, roared back to his feet. He grabbed Sikoa by the throat and launched him across the ring like he weighed nothing. Ooso caught Ludwig Kaiser with a superkick, but Vinci took him down with a brutal clothesline. Roman and Gunther locked eyes in the chaos. The WWE Universe went wild. The two most dominant champions in WWE finally clashing. Roman threw the first punch. Gunther absorbed it, then delivered a chop that echoed through the entire arena. Roman staggered, clutching his chest. Gunther went for another, but Roman ducked and hit a quick Superman punch. Gunther stumbled, but he didn't fall. The message was clear. Neither man was going down without a war. Absolute carnage. The war reaches its breaking point. Unrelenting destruction. The match had officially descended into madness. Forget technical wrestling. Forget strategy. This was pure, unfiltered carnage. The referee tried to regain control, but he was powerless. Bodies were flying. Weapons were being introduced. The ringside area looked less like a wrestling match and more like a crime scene. Gunther was a machine. He absorbed Roman's Superman punch and came back with another brutal chop, this time sending the tribal chief reeling into the barricade. Sikoa and Ludwig Kaiser had spilled outside the ring, trading heavy punches near the timekeeper's area. Meanwhile, Ooso and Vinci were tearing apart the announce table. Jay, battered and bloody, climbed onto the barricade, screaming to the crowd, "This is the Bloodline." Then, he leaped off, crashing onto Vinci with a monstrous splash. The table exploded on impact. The crowd erupted into a deafening, "Holy S" chant. But the destruction was far from over. Gunther goes to the next level. Gunther was done playing games. With Roman still dazed from the barricade impact, Gunther grabbed him by the head and rammed him into the steel steps. Once. Twice. A third time for good measure. The tribal chief was in trouble. The WWE Universe had never seen Roman manhandled like this. Gunther wasn't just winning, he was dominating. And then, he lifted Roman's lifeless body and powerbombed him onto the steel steps. The impact sent shockwaves through the arena. Roman collapsed motionless. The crowd gasped. Paul Heyman, at ringside, screamed in horror. For the first time in 3 years, Roman Reigns looked mortal. The turning point, Bloodline's last stand. Roman Reigns is down, chaos takes over. The atmosphere inside the arena had changed. For the first time in years, Roman Reigns wasn't in control. He wasn't barking orders. He wasn't standing tall. He was motionless, laid out across the steel steps after Gunther's brutal powerbomb. Paul Heyman looked on in sheer panic, clutching his face like he had just seen a ghost. Meanwhile, Sikoa was still brawling like a savage with Ludwig Kaiser near the barricade. Ooso, barely able to stand after his insane dive through the announce table, was trying to shake off the damage. But Imperium? They were standing tall. Gunther turned his attention away from Roman and signaled to Vinci and Kaiser. His message was clear. Finish it. Imperium swarmed. Vinci and Kaiser dragged Sikoa into the ring, beating him down with stiff kicks and brutal knee strikes. Ooso, seeing his brother in danger, used the last of his energy to roll into the ring. But Gunther caught him midair with a vicious boot to the face. Jay collapsed, barely conscious. The Bloodline was falling apart. The Bloodline's last hope. At ringside, Paul Heyman's hands were shaking. This wasn't supposed to happen. Roman was the tribal chief. The Bloodline always found a way to win. But tonight? Gunther was proving to be something different. Heyman reached into his pocket, fumbling with his phone. Desperate. Searching. Then his eyes widened. He had one last move to play. His fingers flew across the screen. A text message sent. Then, Heyman lifted his head and prayed. Because, if this didn't work, the bloodline was finished. The unexpected savior. A shocking twist. Gunther prepares the final blow. Gunther stood tall in the center of the ring, surveying the destruction around him. Solo Sikoa, down. Uso, barely breathing. Roman Reigns, motionless outside the ring. The ring general clenched his fists. This was it. This was the moment Imperium would erase the bloodline. Gunther dragged Solo Sikoa to his feet, lifting him up for one final, devastating powerbomb. The WWE Universe held its breath. This was about to be the death of the bloodline. But then, the lights in the arena flickered. The entire WWE Universe gasped. Gunther stopped mid-motion, his eyes darting toward the entrance ramp. Something wasn't right.
Then, boom.
A deafening explosion of pyro shook the arena. And then, a theme song no one expected to hear. Done with that, blasted through the speakers. The crowd exploded. Jimmy Uso was here. The man Gunther left for dead had returned. Gunther's face tensed. Kaiser and Vinci turned toward the ramp, ready for a fight. But Jimmy wasn't alone. Behind him, storming out in a fury, the returning Jacob Fatu. The WWE Universe lost their minds. The bloodline wasn't done yet, and Gunther had made a fatal mistake. The final battle, Bloodline versus Imperium, ends in war. Jimmy Uso and Jacob Fatu enter the war. The entire arena was shaking. Jimmy Uso, bruised, battered, but unbroken, stood at the top of the ramp. Beside him, Jacob Fatu, the Samoan wrecking machine. The WWE Universe was in shock. This wasn't just a return. This was a declaration of war. Gunther's eyes narrowed as he stared down his newest obstacle. But he didn't move. Instead, he cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders, and smiled. Gunther was never one to back down. If the bloodline wanted to send in reinforcements, then so be it. Jimmy and Fatu sprinted to the ring. Kaiser and Vinci rushed forward to intercept. But they never stood a chance. Jacob Fatu leaped off his feet and hit a spinning heel kick that nearly took Vinci's head off. The crowd erupted. Jimmy Uso? He didn't hesitate. He super-kicked Ludwig Kaiser so hard his body folded like a chair. Gunther took a step forward, but Solo Sikoa had already recovered. Gunther turned.
Bam.
A brutal Samoan spike to the throat. Gunther stumbled right into Jacob Fatu. Fatu grabbed him.
Bam.
A monstrous Samoan drop that shook the entire ring. The bloodline had resurrected itself from the dead. Imperium was in shambles. And Roman Reigns? He finally stirred outside the ring. The tribal chief was back. And he was about to finish this. Roman Reigns' final statement: the tribal chief stands tall. The tribal chief rises. The crowd was losing their minds. For the first time in a long time, someone was matching Gunther's brutality. Chaos erupts. The bloodline strikes back. The fight was absolute chaos. Solo and Gunther brawled with no regard for rules, no concern for safety. Referees flooded the ring, trying to separate them, but it was useless. Then, the lights dimmed. The familiar heartbeat sound effect hit the speakers. A slow, chilling voice echoed through the arena. "Acknowledge me." And just like that, Roman Reigns was here. The crowd exploded as Roman's music hit, and the tribal chief stepped onto the stage. Gunther finally looked away from Solo. His expression remained unreadable, but his body language shifted. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was war. The fallout in the locker room. After the fight, bloodline in disarray. The match was over. The ring was cleared. But the real war was just beginning. Backstage, the locker room was in chaos. WWE officials rushed around. Medics scrambled to assess the damage, and the bloodline's private area had been placed on lockdown. Solo Sikoa, bruised but unbroken, was pacing like a caged animal. Sweat dripped down his face. His fists were still clenched. His rage hadn't faded. It had deepened. He had gone to war with Gunther and walked away without a victory. For Solo, that wasn't just a setback. It was a personal insult. Roman Reigns, having just returned from his dramatic entrance and stare down in the arena, entered the room. The door slammed behind him. Silence fell. Paul Heyman was already inside, anxiously trying to get updates on Jimmy Uso's condition. His phone buzzed nonstop with messages from WWE officials and hospital contacts. No matter how fast his fingers typed, he couldn't keep up. Roman stood still. He scanned the room. His eyes fell on Solo. "You took your shot. You made him bleed." Solo nodded slowly. "But he's still standing," Roman added. "Still walking. Still breathing." Solo looked away. Roman walked over to him and stopped just inches from his face. "That means this ain't over." A family torn in two. Jimmy Uso wasn't just a teammate or a tag partner.
He was blood.
And for all the betrayals and backstabs in recent Bloodline history, there was still a code. You didn't let outsiders beat up family. Gunther crossed that line. He crossed it on live television. And now, the family was divided on how to respond. Jey Uso hadn't spoken. Not publicly. Not privately. Rumors swirled that he had left the arena the moment Jimmy hit the mat. Some insiders claimed he went straight to the hospital. Others said he walked out in disgust, sick of the dysfunction. Roman didn't care about rumors. He cared about control. "I want everyone here," he told Heyman. "Next week. No excuses. No disappearing acts. If you wear our colors, you show up. Period." Heyman nodded, hesitantly. But there was one problem. "Jey won't answer his phone," Heyman said softly. "He blocked everyone.
Even me."
Roman's face twitched. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He didn't flip a table. Instead, he walked over to his chair.
Sat down.
Leaned back.
And smiled.
Then, he better hope Jimmy wakes up soon. An unholy alliance? Elsewhere backstage, Imperium watched the chaos unfold. Gunther, flanked by Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci, stood in the shadows, calm as ever. "They're unraveling," Kaiser said. Gunther said nothing. His arms were crossed. His eyes were locked on a backstage monitor replaying the Solo confrontation. He didn't see a family. He saw weakness disguised as power. Emotion masquerading as leadership. He saw a kingdom ready to fall. "You really think Roman Reigns is going to take this lightly?" Vinci asked. Gunther finally spoke. "He won't have a choice." And just like that, the war wasn't just personal anymore. It was strategic. Lines drawn. SmackDown Civil War. By the time Friday night SmackDown went off the air, social media was on fire. Hashtags like #BloodlineWar, #Gunther vs. Roman, and #WhereIsJey were trending worldwide. Fans didn't just want to fight. They wanted answers. They wanted to know where every piece of the puzzle fit. And most of all, they wanted to know how long this fragile empire could stand before collapsing. Backstage, superstars whispered in hallways. Alliances were questioned. Loyalties tested. Everyone knew. When titans fall, the tremors hit everyone. The Bloodline was at war with Gunther. But the bigger threat? The Bloodline was at war with itself. Jey Uso's return. A family divided. The weight of betrayal. The night had already delivered chaos. Jimmy Uso was in a hospital bed. Gunther had declared war. Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa were ready to respond. But there was one question on everyone's mind. Where was Jey Uso? For weeks, Jey had been absent from the Bloodline's affairs. He had walked away. He had refused to stand with Roman, refused to choose Jimmy, refused to play the game of family loyalty any longer. But the moment Jimmy was brutalized, something changed. The unexpected arrival. Backstage, Roman Reigns paced. His usual calm demeanor was cracking. Paul Heyman stood by, checking his phone, likely waiting for updates from the hospital. Solo Sikoa sat on a bench, his hands wrapped in tape, still seething from his battle with Gunther. Then a knock on the door. Everyone froze. Knocks didn't happen in the Bloodline's locker room. People didn't knock. They were summoned. Roman's eyes narrowed. "Come in." The door creaked open. And there he was. Jey Uso. Dressed in street clothes, hoodie up, his usual fire dimmed, but not extinguished. The camera zoomed in on Roman's face. No surprise. No anger. Just a cold stare. Jay looked around the room, his eyes locking onto Solo first. Then Paul Heyman. Then finally, Roman. The tension in the air was suffocating. Jay versus Roman. The conversation that had to happen. Roman smirked, leaning back against the wall. You finally show up. Jay exhaled slowly, nodding. Where were you, yes? Roman's voice was calm, too calm. Your brother got his ass handed to him. You should have been here. Jay clenched his jaw. And if I was? What? I'm supposed to stand next to you. Fight your battles? Do your dirty work? Solo stood up, fists clenched. Watch your mouth, yes. Jay didn't even look at him. His eyes stayed locked on Roman. Roman chuckled under his breath. So that's what this is now. You're still mad? You still crying over what happened months ago? Jay shook his head, stepping forward. Nah, see, that's the difference between me and you, Roman. You hold grudges. You punish people.
Me?
I don't gotta do all that. But I ain't stupid either. Roman's smirk faded. What are you saying? Jay took another step forward, looking Roman dead in the eyes. I know why Gunther did what he did. A beat of silence. Roman's eyes darkened. Enlighten me. Jay's voice was steady. Because for the first time in years, somebody saw what I saw. They saw that you ain't unbeatable. You ain't untouchable. They saw weakness. They saw what I saw the night I left. The tension explodes. Solo lunged. Jay barely had time to react as Solo shoved him back against the wall. Paul Heyman gasped, stepping between them. Solo, no.
No.
This is not the time. Jay shoved Solo back. Oh, so now you want to fight me? After everything I did for you? Solo's nostrils flared. You turned your back on us, yes. Jay laughed bitterly. Turn my back? Or did I finally see the truth? Roman finally stepped between them. That's enough. His voice was sharp, commanding.